Welcome to another episode of the One Haas podcast. I'm Sean Lee, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ray Guan.
And today we're joined by Wei Zhu, an all-star of the ACTS 2022 class. Welcome, Wei.
Great to be here. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Wei, why don't you start us off and give us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and where you grew up.
So yeah, I was born and raised in China and came to the States about 10 years ago. Went to U of M for computer science and economics. And now I'm Ray mentioned, part of EW 2022 at Berkeley. So go Blue and go Bears. So outside of class, I work at this startup company called Clearbit, based out of Soma, but our company is globally distributed. So right now, I serve as a data product manager there, essentially manage all of the data-related products at the company. And before Clearbit, I was at Crunchbase as data solutions architect, essentially helping out scale the data engineering team and also building out customer-facing solutions. And before that, I was at another company that got acquired by SoFi in 2017, and I helped build the data engineering team there. And before that, I was at Michigan, spent 2 years there building out a couple companies myself. Definitely had some great learnings there. It was also kind of a traumatizing memory. But yeah, that was one of the reasons I really wanted to come to the Bay Area and really learn from the Bay Area successful entrepreneurs and startups.
Got it. You know what? You're the first guest to ever go through your background in reverse. Why is that? Is it because of just how you're thinking about it? Or was there like a clear path that led you to where you are today from your past experiences?
So I guess I always try to lay out my stories in fact and then reasons, right? Okay. So now I'm here because, I came from something else. And before that, I came from something else. So the reason there is that, you always make a step, right, into a direction because of something.
Maybe we should start interviewing in that order.
Yeah.
I like that. It made a lot of sense. Okay. I guess the immediate question is, what brought you to Haas?
So I've been working at startups for 4 or 5 years, getting close to 5 years. And right now, as a product manager, I realize there's so many different skills that I haven't yet learned, from before as an engineer, right? As an engineer, you're supposed to just, face a computer monitor, type your code, right? Solve a problem that is very specific. But, as a product manager, the skill set is much more broader. Right. And also part of the reason is because, as I mentioned before, I did a couple companies back in Michigan, did not do well. At least the second company was totally traumatizing. And that gave me a lot of great takeaways about, what I needed to learn. Because I knew, as an entrepreneur, as an engineer, I can build something from 0 to 1, right? But building something from 1 to 100, right, requires a totally different skill set. And that is something I really want to learn from the MBA class.
That is very insightful. Yeah.
Yeah. Wei, you and I have talked before on some of the companies that you've built. I heard from our talkings, of course, that you've started up your own karaoke company.
Yeah, that's the one I want to hear about. I want to hear about Midnight KTV.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, so the time was 2012, and I was sitting in a micro econ class, intermediate micro econ. I was econ major, and the professor was talking, and I was so bored. I was like, how do I even make sense of any of this? How do I even use them, right? I'm sure all of you have that kind of similar struggle at some point during college. It's like, I'm learning psychology, I'm learning, micro econ, I'm learning social science, but, I can't seem to find a reason for those.
Might have been every day.
Right. So I definitely struggled with that. So that was kind of a snapshot, right? So with that kind of frustration, also at the time, I was an international student. For the international student, you pay public university, you still pay upward of 50 grand every year. Yep. So the ROI there was not very obvious to me at the point. Right. So I got a little bit frustrated. I tried poking around different ways. I tried to build my own independent study. It didn't quite pan out. And towards the end of it, I was like, might as well just use that money for a higher ROI and just build a company myself. I got excited about that. And then at the time, I was also a computer science major. Square, back then, right, it was this tiny startup that just came out with the little Square reader. Yep. And I was amazed by it. I was like, you can optimize, right, a credit card transaction by that much with just this little innovation. I wonder if I can use that, right, to optimize and small business. My mom had her own small business, which was a lot of struggle back then.
Yeah.
So I always have this in the back of my mind. I always wanted to just see if I can build something for small businesses. So I essentially came up with this small business storefront management system. This idea just essentially using Square Card Reader with a bunch of other things to manage your inventory, your customers, your day-to-day operations, anything.
Right.
And back then there wasn't quite, such an integrated solution yet. There was QuickBooks, there was like a bunch of other solutions, but nothing so integrated. I was like, that must be a really good idea. So let me just give it a try. So I built the initial version of that and started testing it out at local small businesses.
Yeah.
I chatted with maybe 50, 60 local small business owners, and they were all excited about the idea, but none of them were really willing to open up their business for someone to come in and start, just testing it, right?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I mean, understandably, if you own a business, you don't want someone to just come in and change everything.
Right.
So very quickly I realized, it was probably not going to work out. So I changed my plan. I was like, if they can run a business, I can start a business myself. At the time, looking at Ann Arbor's population, it's like there's something around 20,000 Asian population on campus. So I was like, okay, there may be something I can do just by building a karaoke. I've been to karaoke's before. I do like karaoke.
Yeah.
So essentially, I lied to my parents. Don't tell them. I lied to my parents to say that I need a little bit tuition money in advance. That's basically how I got my first seed, and use that money to just pitch to my friends. Hey, I got this investment, 50 grand, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to just come in with me?
Yeah.
And 2 of my friends joined, and the 3 of us put together this pot of money, 150 grand, and we just essentially rented this place. We rented this 2,400 square feet place. It was a vanilla box, essentially 4 blank walls, nothing in between, retail space, and then we just converted it into kind of a private room karaoke, the Asian style karaoke lounge. It was kind of a, your typical figuring it out story. That was my second year in the States. So literally I couldn't really speak a full sentence of English properly.
Yeah.
And at the time I didn't know, what is a drill, what is a 2x4, what is, high voltage, low voltage, any kind of that thing. But I guess in retrospect, ignorance is a kind of blessing in that way, because had I known how complex it is to set up a small business, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yep. Ignorance is bliss.
Exactly, right? So ignorance is bliss there, and just kind of took us about a year and a half to really just put everything together. But by the end, because there's such a pent-up demand in Ann Arbor, especially around North Campus, if you've been to Ann Arbor, North Campus of Ann Arbor is this engineering school.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't really have, good way to spend their nightlife there. So a lot of Chinese population come in and they enjoy their nightlife there. One thing that I think is brag-worthy is actually the second year in operation, the karaoke bar was doing well, and actually 3 couples got engaged in the karaoke bar. Wow. So they liked it that much. And I'm happy to report that all 3 of them are still happily married and nobody got divorced. So I guess that's good.
That's good branding for the company.
Should have called it Double Happiness KTV.
Yeah, probably. So it's probably worth changing its name. But good thing is that the karaoke bar did well.
Yeah.
Bad thing is the small business management system didn't quite pan out. I was terrible of a coder and built everything just too customized for the karaoke business, and it wasn't quite suitable for other type of business. I was also too involved in day-to-day operations at the company. So towards the end, it didn't quite pan out, and I think it was time for me to move on to the next chapter. So just essentially sold the business to a local entrepreneur and just moved on.
I'm really curious about 102 Lab. So I was reading on your LinkedIn, you sold the business, Midnight KTV, to basically provide the funding to 102 Lab. What was 102 Lab? Like, what were you guys trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so I guess 102 Lab was really a continuation of the first business. Essentially, ever since the KTV became a hit, a lot of my friends came to me for advice because they wanted to do something similar, right? Everybody has their passion. You might be passionate about pizza, you might be passionate about yoga, you might be passionate about any sort of thing. You want to turn that into real business. But how to go about starting that first business in the first place, right? As a first time entrepreneur, it could seem super intimidating, right? Like I said earlier, had I known how difficult it would be, I probably wouldn't have done it, right? So from incorporating to setting up your finance to interviewing customers, all sorts of activities can seem super intimidating. But the second time around, it gets so much easier, right? So I gave a lot of advice, and then very quickly I thought to myself, I could have done better, right?
Yeah.
I could have, instead of just giving out advice, I could also help them get things executed,
Right.
So essentially, with that idea, I wanted to build this small business incubator.
Yeah.
No such thing really exists. I just want to provide this environment, resource to help, passionate local entrepreneurs to build their business.
Yeah.
And at the time also made perfect sense for Michigan because Detroit just went bankrupt a couple of years ago. The local economy really needed a boost.
Right.
So I was like, maybe that was the right idea. Unfortunately, one big mistake, which turned out to be the thing that really brought us down, was the financial model that we came up with was essentially profit sharing, right? Understandably, customers wouldn't trust us if they saw someone just come in and say, hey, I'm going to help you start your business. Give me $100,000, right? Nobody will be willing to do that.
Sure.
Right.
So essentially, we came up with the idea of just profit share as they make money. So essentially, if they are successful, then we make money.
Correct.
If they don't become profitable, we don't see a dime.
Right.
So essentially, that aligned our interest with their interest. But unfortunately, the one thing I didn't foresee was that the cycle to become profitable for small business is actually much longer, right? So usually take 2-3 years for any small business to really break even, start making real profit.
Yeah.
And that was too long of a cycle for us. At least the cash reserve that we had wasn't able to sustain ourselves for that long. And at the time, I didn't have enough credit history or anything. Bank wouldn't provide us a loan. I went to talk to investor, and investors like, what the heck are you doing? Like small businesses, it doesn't have that X factor.
Yeah.
It's not going to be your next Twitter or Facebook or anything. I'm not willing to give your money. So by the end, just used up all of the money that I had from selling the first company. And literally it was kind of heartbreaking. It was kind of traumatizing, honestly, to just watch my bank balance drop digit by digit. And by the end, I even owe bank money on my debit account. So essentially my debit account at one point had a parentheses behind it, right? So that was not a great thing. But that was also some great takeaways from that experience is that from the get-go, you need to know what are you trying to accomplish, and at the same time also trying to figure out at what point do you need what type of resource, right? Does your business plan make sense along the journey? Should you anticipate having to raise fund or anything, which seems obvious, right? If you have worked at a startup. But at that time, I didn't have any kind of startup experience. I didn't really think any of that. Just went into data anyway. So in that sense, ignorance was kind of a curse. But at the same time, it was great learning experience for me.
That's beautiful. I think that's the most important lesson. No matter what, you have to try, whether you succeed or fail. I think many of the people we talk to, you've only succeeded because you've failed so many other times in so many other ways. Like, I think your message is just so inspiring for any students that want to be an entrepreneur.
That's great. I'm glad.
Speaking of that, I actually know that you've also been involved in helping people here at Haas in terms of just coaching, giving advice. Do you want to speak a little bit to your involvement so far?
Yeah, so actually just had our first session. It's the STEP program that you mentioned. We just had our first meeting last Thursday. If you don't know about STEP, it's essentially this student entrepreneurship program where they help bring students together to work on different ideas, to form startups, in the ultimate goal of putting them on the track for the next step. Essentially to raise fund, to get your customers, to get your product out there, whatever that might be, right? So you can continue to develop your business either independently or go through, launch or Skydeck or any kind of other accelerator that we have on campus, which is amazing. So I really wanted to help out. And it also kind of perfectly aligns with the 102 lab idea is that, I could also be helpful for these students who is going on their first entrepreneurship journey. I could have probably just, lend a hand there, share some personal stories, some experience so that, they can go about this journey with a clear mind, with some clear directions in their head. I am happy to share that there are exciting ideas around your personal finance as a new parent, your infrastructure building from a government's perspective. We all know the Bay Area has spent so much more money on improving infrastructures, but we haven't really seen dramatic improvement. And there was this one team trying to work on how to provide a little bit of transparency into this infrastructure building process, which seems to me is such a great idea. Everybody can really benefit from it, and that kind of innovation coming out of Berkeley, I think is very important.
So Wei, you've been here for a little over a semester. You have another 2.5 years to go, really. What are you really looking to get out of the Haas experience?
So one of the primary drivers that really prompted me to join Haas is that, I really want to leverage Haas connections and resources to launch my next startup. Because, the entrepreneur is still in me, even though the failing experience can be kind of traumatizing. I always wanted to do it again because, it is exhilarating to see, your first customer coming in, that type of excitement, right? It sticks with you, and I want to see that again. So that's my ambition. But at the same time, also, I acknowledge the fact that right now I have more to lose, right? I have a job, I have a family, I have everything. So really want to make sure that this time I do it right. Right. So for that, I definitely need to learn from all the amazing faculties, from my classmates, from everybody, right? To get a better idea of how to take something again from 1 to 100, right? So that was my primary driver coming to Haas. And for that, I'm looking forward to participate in the entrepreneurship class, STEP, and in the future, Skydeck launch, any type of entrepreneurship related activities, you'll see my name on it.
Awesome.
Very nice. Lastly, Wei, we want to ask you, which defining leadership principle resonates most with you?
So my favorite one is actually challenge the status quo, or as we put it, axe the status quo.
There you go. What did our slogan in?
Axe? Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Is that
That
part
was
of
our-
Axe? Is Axe the status quo?
That was
Wow,
our chant this year.
That's my first time hearing that. That's pretty good.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, there are so many things that we can challenge. And, kind of going back to my background a little bit, I've been working in the Bay Area and being involved in data field for a period of time. Right now I serve as data product manager, and before I was data engineer. And data really fascinates me because I see data not as just a bunch of numbers that you can run math on. It's an abstraction of human behavior. And from that sea of data, you can actually see patterns and find ways to optimize things, right?
Absolutely.
There's so many things that you can do. Right now, with everything that's coming out, either it's machine learning, artificial intelligence, any type of technology and advancement, it means that we have more and more opportunities to really challenge the status quo. Right. So not to give out specific examples, but going back to the STEP program, there are so many ideas that I wouldn't even have dreamed about, and people are already working on those.
Right.
And I really want to, as an MBA or as STEP coach or as an entrepreneur, to help them, or maybe myself take a leading role at some point to really challenge the status quo and make the world a little better place.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Wei, for coming on with us.
Great. Thank you guys for having me.